All right, what's going on, everyone? Greetings to the VC. This is Will. I'm back again with a second video here after my intro. And this is one I'm going to call Turning Point Records. And these are all records that I heard at some point in my life that opened me up to new ideas of what might be out there that I could be pursuing to listen, like through research, whatever that was. Now it's mostly done through algorithmic recommendations or, going on Discogs for me and seeing what other projects and artists that I just learned about might have been involved in and sampling tracks here or there. But back in the day, it could have been, going on Wikipedia or talking to people who maybe were the ones who turned me on to the music in the first place to try to figure out what else it is that I should be checking out if I liked this or that record. So I'm going to show a lot of records in this one. Hopefully that's something that everyone's going to enjoy. And I'm going to start with one that was a really big turning point record for me, and probably the thing that warmed me up to, I guess, what I would now understand to be modern jazz or avant-garde composition. Back then, I kind of I don't know what I considered it at all. So this is Dawn of Midi. The record's called Dysnomia. And I think they only made this one record. Just traditional black. I don't think they ever did any weird colorways or anything like that. This came out in 2013. And I heard about this record. I think it was on maybe Radiolab or some other such NPR podcast way back in the day. And one of the hosts, they don't normally talk about music on that show, but for whatever reason, they were talking about this in the context of it sounding so electronic. And it's a pretty simple trio, if I'm remembering right. A bassist, drummer, and then a piano, oftentimes a prepared piano, which gives it a much different character to the sound. And very repetitious, but all played live without looping, which I think the host thought was extremely novel. I think it's pretty novel. Though now, in terms of some of the other music I've gotten into in the last 2 years, maybe not so novel, but still really intriguing to me at the time. Still a record I like a lot. I know some people sometimes think this music sounds a little anxious, and I get that, but I still really, really, really like it. A record I'll still listen to from time to time, though not as much because I have so much more new stuff in the rotation. But, prior to that, I would say I never really thought I would like piano music, quote unquote, or modern classical or modern jazz. Again, I'm not sure if you'd even call this jazz. I think you would, but I'm not actually certain how to classify it. So super important record, and one that I continue to reference mentally as I explore a lot of music that I've found through the vinyl community in the last couple of years especially. Okay. There's not really a great order to these, so I hope this can make some sense. Old Saw with Country Tropics. So I think it was also some podcast, so I don't think NPR. I'm not exactly sure what I was listening to. And they were talking about like American primitive guitar music. Again, a genre I had never been exposed to, John Fahey and all that. And this record, for whatever reason, came up. And I found this one on Spotify. And yeah, this is crazy good, kind of drony, sometimes I think raga influence. That was the thing that got me very interested in the genre, was some of the artists that included raga influences, world music influences, to kind of create something that you wouldn't just think of as traditional guitar music. So this is the first press from 2021 with the Obi. I was lucky to get this. I think they're pretty sought after by the people who like this. So it's not cheap, unfortunately, but there are later represses that you can go and get. This band also just came out with a new record this year, which you can probably still go get on Bandcamp. I'll probably link that below. All of this stuff I'll link below. They're Discogs entries if you want to check them out. The other record, which I don't have because it actually hasn't been pressed, that really got me into exploring and trying to figure out which of these, artists I like, was an artist called Henry Flynt. And the record, or the thing that let me look it up real quick. I've got my computer up here. The recording that I really, really got into from him is called You Are My Everlovin and Celestial Power. So it's like a little EP or a two-sider. Each track is about 20-something minutes, but he's only put it out on cassette. And I don't think he's still making music, and no one's come around to press this on vinyl yet. Would love to get it on vinyl. But yeah, so that one is another one that's even more like droney and raga inspired. But yep, this one's really, really, really great. And also it's just a regular black vinyl. I'm not going to speak too much about this because I'm sure it's one that a lot of people know, but I feel like it's obligatory to talk about this a little bit again in the context of getting into instrumental music in general and moving away from vocal driven stuff like more traditional rock. Obviously, given my age, Godspeed You Black Emperor, Lift Your Skinny Fists Like Antennas to Heaven. This is a 2000 Canadian pressing. Some of their albums are really annoying to try to collect because it's very hard to figure out which the first editions are. But if you don't care about that, represses are plentiful and frequent. But yeah, I grabbed this one a few years ago on vinyl, but of course I heard it a long, long time ago back when I was in college, which would have been probably 2006, 2007, and had never heard anything like it. And I think for a lot of people, this was like their first post-rock experience, hearing something that sounded vaguely symphonic, but done in a way that didn't sound like classical music. Just a really new idea. Plus, I think probably one of the first things where I had ever heard field recording or audio sampling done in such an ambient textural way versus what I might have heard in, say, like a lot of the electronic music I was listening to at the time, Aphex Twin or Daft Punk and the like. So, not going to say too much more. I'm sure almost everyone knows this one, but a super formative and interesting record in my history. Another one I heard around college times, though I don't think it was pressed on vinyl until later. Yep. So this pressing is from 2011, but the project predates that. Music from Saharan Cellphones. And this is a compilation that I was put out. What does it say here, actually? Put out by Sahil Sound. So I think that was maybe one of the earlier projects or one of like the formative projects of that label was the Saharan Cellphones thing. And at the time I remember getting this as MP3s on my phone, or maybe it was on even a CD back then, because that was before iPhone when I heard this thing again, like think back 2007. And I remember reading or being told that it was someone who had gone to Africa and scoured smartphones for their storage chips and created this compilation of just what people in Africa were listening to, like what was being traded back and forth on their phones. I don't think that the junkyard part is actually true. When I decided to search out this record on vinyl, I learned more about it, and I think it was a much more intentional project than that, but still really cool. And though the audio quality is really varying because a lot of this stuff comes from pretty compressed MP3 files, it was my first time hearing things that I'll just very broadly describe as world, right? Like different ways of singing, different ways of composing, different scales, different time signatures, things that are not traditionally Western to my ears. So this I really connected to very quickly for the novelty of it, and also just came to really enjoy it. I don't like all sorts of stuff like that. Like I'm not super into Zamrock or like a lot of other stuff, but there are certain aspects of this stuff, this African music, that I have come to really like, especially when it pops up in things like jazz or other genres I've found. So this compilation, and they made another one, I forget what it was called, but they made a second one that I also have, but this is the one that was more formative for me. And yeah, like I said, there's no real rhyme or reason to the order here, I don't think. This is something that I came by in the last few years, though it's not that new. This is Jan Jelinek's Loop Finding Jazz Records. So this was originally released in 2001, and I don't know how I missed it, other than the fact that it was probably harder to find German music or underground techno, electronic music back then. So someone didn't have a CD of it, I don't know how I would have found it at that age. But I found it again probably 4 years ago at this point. And I don't know what outlet was speaking about it, but the description I heard of it's like you're it's like you're going to a rave inside of a photocopy machine. Well, that really spoke to me for whatever reason. And I found it on Spotify, listened, bought a copy on Discogs that was just like a more recent repress. And as I grew more and more fond of this record, I mean, first of all, it really unlocked that there is more electronic music out there that I should be trying to find and pursue beyond just this or that album that I had heard and have kind of, kept going back to, but also just to investigate more minimal, almost ambient house. So that's something that I continue to try to like research and explore and find new artists and new things to collect. And this one looks funny because this is actually a white label promo, again from 2001 Germany. So yeah, I went all in on getting like a great pressing of this. And okay, I guess this is kind of keeping with electronic music. Larry Heard, Love's Arrival. So I had first heard Larry Heard probably 6-7 years ago. A friend of ours, only one song was on a mix that they had made for parties and stuff. Dreaming of Better Days. I think it was a single, which I later bought and also bought a second one to give to them as a gift. And then as I started getting into collecting again the last couple years, I remembered that. And I was like, well, I like that track. I should check out what else this guy's made, learn more about him. He's got several different names he's put out music under. Mr. Fingers, I think, being the other big notable one in terms of album production. And this Love's Arrival is from 2001, so it's more later era for him, and that's what I gravitate more towards from what I've heard. His earlier stuff, I'm sure, was super popular at the time, but to me it doesn't hold up, and it's just probably just the bias of my ears, not being around for that music at that time. It just doesn't sound as appealing to me, but this stuff, Love's Arrival and a few others. Yeah, so this is an original 2001 pressing. The jacket's really beat up, which is a whole story that I'll get into in another video, but the record's in great shape. And there's a great reissue of this, I think from 2023 or 2024, that you can also check out that has an extra disc of content, which I also have, but this is the original. And I don't know, just usually singing really doesn't do it for me in a lot of instances. I think you've seen so far, like a lot of the music I'm sharing doesn't really feature vocals in a prominent way. I don't mind singing here. I think it's kind of groovy and fun. I think it really fits the vibe of the music. So yeah, I like that. And along those same lines, I guess like Galcher Lustwork is someone who does kind of sort of singing, sort of rapping over electronic music these days. And I can get behind that as well. So I know I mentioned in the last video that I don't really collect reggae or dub or anything like that, but I do have an intuition because of this record that I could definitely get into dub. So I continued to look. So this is Son of Ra and the Beachhead EP, and I could also probably get out On Patrol, the LP that came out around the same time. So this is from 2008, and it's kind of like a psychedelic dub, I think, project by Sun Ra. He's made a ton of music, not to be confused with Sun Ra, but obviously an homage there in the name. And my understanding is he does it all himself through looping and synthesizers and his own guitar work and stuff. Kind of a one-man band. He's collabed with a bunch of people. I have a record of him collabing with Laraji, and just a really interesting artist. And I cannot remember how I found this. It must have been on some album of the year list when I was, it could have even been on like Pitchfork of all places. And I bought this. This is one of those records that I bought before I got into collecting off Discogs just because I really liked it. And then when I got back into collecting, or I got into collecting in a more real way, I realized the pressing I had was not a first pressing. And then I happened upon this first pressing just in a shop in New York, and it was very affordable. So I grabbed that and I sold the repress. Easy peasy. But I love this. I love On Patrol. And I continue to always find new stuff from him and try to check it out. I think he has another one called The Finks. That's also very good. So this to me feels like my gateway into getting into dub. And I'm still trying. I got to figure out though what's older and more traditional that I can connect with in the same way that I like this. All right, this section, I guess there is a little sorting here. So this section is going to take us back to the first record, Dysnomia, into the more repetitive, modern jazz, modern classical, however you want to describe it. This is Lotto with Elite Feline. I found this record on YouTube. It was randomly served up to me on an algorithm. I think it was either YouTube or it was on the Quietus best of list, and this is from 2016. Maybe it was the Quietus, actually. So, yeah, that's a safer bet, because I don't think I was getting served that much random YouTube stuff back then. But yeah, this is just a 2-track, crazy, like repetitive, kind of ominous jam. I mean, my understanding is that these guys are from Poland, or at least this pressing is Polish. I think they're from there. And yeah, this is on the Instant Classics label, that they would just get into the studio and improvise and record it all, and then I guess they would press their improvisations that they really enjoyed and they thought were worthy of making into a record. Side A, especially to me, is awesome. I think that one is called Rope. Yeah. Rope and Pointing to a Marble. It's just got this... It's one of those things where when you do a deep listen and, you know, every few measures you hear just a slight change. And it's just very rewarding to hear that and catch that. It's much more of a headphones listen than a car listen, unless you've got great car speakers. But it does have a few points where it kind of, and this is so funny to say, but it kind of like crescendos with like the use of a cymbal, and you're just like, whoa. It feels like this huge payout, and it's not, but it does when you really get in the zone listening to it. So that's Elite Feline. You can definitely listen to this on streaming, and I'm sure this is not an expensive record. Yes, so this is one of my favorite ones from the past 5 years for sure. H. Hunt. See, the camera, I'm doing the left-right thing is so tough. H. Hunt playing piano for Dad. And this came out in 2020. I think I first heard it around 2022. And it's just a coincidence. I first heard this record around the time my daughter was born. I know it's playing piano for Dad. And that inspired me to check it out. This was probably also a Quietus best of, now come to think of it, because she was born in March, so I would have found this probably in, end of 2021, early 2022. But yeah, this is a 2020 pressing, so maybe Quietus was talking about it because it came out late 2020. I don't know the exact reason, but I assume that's where it came from. I'm not sure where else I would have heard about it. But this is just a solo piano record. It's pretty short. I think you can get in and out of it in about 40 minutes. All recorded in one take in a very kind of creaky environment. I don't think it was recorded in a proper studio. And the way it was mic'd, he's using this kind of old creaky piano where you can really feel, or not feel, well, I think you can feel it, but you can also hear him doing things like making little adjustments or hitting the pedals. You can hear the creak, or you can hear like the sound of the pedals hitting the floor. It's not this hygienic, isolated experience. It's really like you're in the room with him. It has so many great moments too, where if you're listening with headphones again, you can hear him humming along as he plays. The most prominent is on the last track, which is called, the track list is not on here on the back, but yeah, the first pressing came with this obi, which is really nice. You can still order this from his website. What is the name of the label here? Morsels. So little information about him. This is the only record he's put out. There's nothing since that indicates that he's working on anything else. They have put out some more. They put out some more records on this label, but they're not one of those labels that's putting out a record a month. It's a much slower pace. But yeah, go if you haven't heard this one. This really got me into, again, like solo piano. Like maybe I could like that. I never really thought that I could like that, because so much of what I liked, things I showed in the last video, like Modest Mouse, Pavement, bands like The Fall, like just it didn't make me think, JPEG Mafia, like liking this and liking JPEG Mafia doesn't really make sense. But yeah, this record, I still play this all the time in the car, especially when we just want to chill out and try to get our daughter to go to sleep. I would play this all the time, off my phone, even just in the house before I had it on vinyl, just to relax her, because I liked it so much and I thought it was a great thing for her to hear. But yeah, we got to move on. So Sam Gendel, Sam Wilkes, music for saxophone and bass guitar. This is also from 2020. Well, this one is a reissue. The first one that they did, I think, was only 50 or so and signed, and it's kind of impossible to get right now. If you have one and you want to sell it to me, reach out. I don't think people are selling it though. And so yeah, this is like the limited reissue they did after that. I don't know how many it was, but still I think in the same year. And this I found, how did I find this one? Could have been the Quietus again. They're always good for like offbeat stuff. As someone who's in the US, right, they cover a lot of things that we don't hear in traditional media. So yeah, kind of like that first record, Dawn of Midi, the repetitiveness, but also the composition. And, I'm sure a lot of people in the VC know of both these guys. I've since come to collect a lot of music by both of them, and they both put out great records this year even. But yeah, this one really got me into like, I need to explore, again, more modern jazz, and this gave me great starting points if I can investigate both these artists and see what they've been a part of and start listening and collecting that way. All right. Now we're taking a harder turn. So there's one record I don't have to talk about here, which I think fits the mold of like I like really textural stuff, repetitive stuff, sometimes the vocals, but not always. The band Sleep with their album Dope Smoker, which I don't have. I'm still looking for a first pressing of that to pull the trigger on. And they don't come up. They just don't come up, and I never see them in any shops. But so if I had that in hand, I'd definitely be showing that as a record. And also as an example of, I've tried to find a lot of other stuff like that and have had people recommend me bands that if I like that, I should check out, and I just don't like it. But a band that I do like that is heavy but in a different way is Swans. I had never heard any of their stuff from the 90s or even their early 2000s. And this is from, the sticker's on the front for this one, but this is from 2014. And I'm pretty sure I heard about this through Anthony Fantano, The Needle Drop. And, I sometimes really like things that he recommends. Sometimes I don't. At that time, I was always trying stuff that he was giving a high score. He gave this, I think, a 9 or a 10. So I definitely tried it. And I really liked it. I wasn't expecting to necessarily, because like I said, with Sleep, I've never really gotten into metal. I don't think you would call this metal. I mean, it's kind of like experimental noise, post-rock. This stuff is a lot more melodic and listenable, at least on the album side. We went to a Swan show. I optimistically thought I could take two, my now wife and another friend to go see them, because I was like, this is pretty cool. It's heavy, but it's really listenable. The live show was a very different beast, and I was down for it, but we also didn't bring earplugs, and it was extremely loud. It was definitely the loudest show I've ever been to. It was a small venue in Brooklyn. But yeah, this album got me into Swans. I am still trying to go backwards and get into some of their older stuff, but just too much new stuff is coming up. So Yeah, probably everyone knows this one. Anyways, I just wanted to throw this one in because this is like another example of something that's a little bit harder. It's not quite punk, but it is a little more punk than I ever thought that I would enjoy. Parquet Courts, Sunbathing Animal. I never got into hardcore or any, screamo, emo, any of that stuff. I mean, this is not that, but it is just a little bit faster and punchier than the things that I like, think Pavement again. But I found a lot of overlap in the guitar work here to those bands, specifically Pavement, in just the different tunings I think that they use and just the way that they compose. It's not the same, but I found enough there and love this record a lot. It got me into this band in a big way. Super sad at how hard they've dropped off with every subsequent record from here, but they were great live. The one time I got to go see them, and I'm still looking for the alternate cover for this, if that one never comes up either, it seems. And the record before this too, which I got into after finding Sunbathing Animal, Light Up Gold, also excellent. So super, super cool band. I hope that they can figure out how to get back to maybe this sound or move away from the more safer dad rock style of stuff that they've done. They also did a very, very cool project called PCPC, which was Parquet Courts and PC Worship, and they put out a little EP there called Live at Ramsgate, which I have, which has a great track on it called Fell Into the Wrong Crowd. So if you missed that, if you're a fan of this band, go find that track. Super cool. And very quick, just as I said, I don't really like punk. The one punk thing that I found, and I did get this recommended to me on YouTube. This is a bit of a gross, sorry for the cover here, but this is a vegan punk band or hardcore band called Carnist, and they made this album called Hellish, and I don't know why YouTube served this up to me, but I just thought this thing really hit. The record was super cheap. I think I got this for like $6 or something. This is a 2016 UK pressing, and I didn't really like the other albums that they put out, but this one I really liked, and I don't know why I like this and not a lot of other stuff, but if you can recommend more things like this, I will gladly go check them out. All right, we're almost done here. I know this has been a long one. Hopefully you've enjoyed seeing all these records, and now we're getting into stuff that I've really found more recently. So The Pearl by Harold Budd and Brian Eno. I've gotten very, very, very into collecting ambient stuff in the last 2 years, and we found this record in a new used just in section of our local store here in Jersey City, and I think it was only like $20. And I went back and looked it up. It was a first press, and this is before I was even really into collecting first presses. It was just like a really nice surprise. This is the 1984 US, so I guess if I really wanted to, I could upgrade to like a UK at some point, but this one sounds okay to me. I haven't had issues with it, and I had only heard about Harold Budd a few years earlier. That same friend who had that song, the Larry Heard song, had some Harold Budd stuff from which of his projects? I'm blanking on this. I'm kind of situationally bad at remembering these, but she had some great stuff on that playlist from him, but I never really followed up on it, and found this. Mostly bought it because of the Eno on here, just to check it out, and it was cheap. And since have gone through and I've picked up most of his original stuff, a lot of Eno stuff too, and tons of other ambient that I'm super into, and that brought me into also like ambient-ish adjacent Kraut stuff. It got me more into like Cluster, and yeah, lots of other stuff. So this being such a great first impression record, and only finding it probably back in 2022 or 2023, huge turn and influence in how I collect and what I listen to. And the last one, though it's very hard to pick a record that really crystallizes getting into spiritual jazz for me, this is Don Cherry Organic Music Society. This is a 1973 Sweden pressing. I'd heard a lot about Don Cherry from the VC, in particular Dom, Seeking a Thread. I think posted, I don't know if he's done a dedicated video to Don Cherry, but comes up a lot in his collecting that he shares with us. And I guess I probably first heard him through the Cadona project in the Colin Wolcott video that I think Dom made. And I liked those well enough and have collected those and have since, collected a lot of, like a lot of Pharoah Sanders, a little bit of Alice Coltrane. But this record really stands out. I saw this on the wall at Deep Cuts in Brooklyn, and I hadn't heard it. It was expensive, so I did not buy it. But then I left the store and loaded it up on streaming. And I listened and I listened, and I probably listened to the record like 4 or 5, 6 times through. And I don't remember if I called or wrote on Instagram, but I called us, checked in to see if it was still there. Because getting to that part of Brooklyn from Jersey City takes about, 75 minutes, and finding the time to do it is not always so easy. But they said it was still there. I decided to go back and get it. And this one is such a trip. I mean, to me, the real true record that got me into spiritual jazz, and wanting to explore it more, is kind of unobtainable. The Pharoah Sanders record and Harvest Time. When I was first exploring that stuff and heard that track, and I can't remember how it got referenced to me, but that one I was like, whoa. Like had already been getting into some classic jazz, Blue Note stuff, and liking that and enjoying exploring that and being in this area. I mean, a lot of that stuff was pressed in Jersey City. So you see a lot of Blue Note stuff in the New York City area, the Jersey, North Jersey area. And so it's very easy to go into a store, take a picture of the wall, or if they have a rare bin, listen to stuff, figure out what you like, maybe go back and pick it up. And, but yeah, so I'd already been into that type of jazz selectively. And I heard that song. I was like, this stuff is to my ear, way better. Maybe not to playing at a party, because some people don't like that stuff. Some people find it a little too out there and weird, even though I think it's pretty listenable compared to other free jazz stuff. And, that eventually led me to this, and that trained my ear into being able to listen to this and be like, oh, that is a must go get. And along with, I've had so many great finds in the New York area, which I'll probably do a video of some of the great finds from 2025 soon as the year is rounding out. But yeah, this thing hits. It's so cool. I love the journey it takes you on. I love the soulfulness of it. I love the blending of instrumentation and world influences. And here we go. Let's show the label there. So this is the Caprice kind of purple label. Checked out. It's in great condition. The jacket's in great condition too. And that's it. Hopefully you enjoyed. These are a way for me to talk about a little bit more of where I am and what I listen to and what I've been exploring, and where I'm trying to move my ear as well. So still looking for more dub recommendations, still looking for more anything recommendations, I guess. Minimal techno stuff. Yeah, all of that. So I know this has been a long one. I have a hard time keeping them short, but hope you enjoyed. If you like this, check out the links below. I'll link to all this stuff on Discogs, and you can drop a comment, say you enjoyed. If you have any recommendations for me based on what I showed here, leave a comment. If you found something that you hadn't heard before and you liked it, leave a comment. I would love to see that as well. And I think I'll end it here. Thanks everyone for watching, and see you later.